I was just asking, when it comes to the outside of the usual power conferences, which mid major team do you think deserve more national attention going into the bracket selection on Sunday?
Well, I guess this goes back to, in part, what is the definition now of mid-major, right? Like, we've reached a point where anything outside the Power Four in the Big East is considered mid-major. Well, I don't consider San Diego State or Memphis, and certainly not Gonzaga, mid-major. The Zags have kind of been in their own group, but if you're talking about the old school definition of mid-major, which are kind of the non-football, the non-high end football, the best mid-major by far for half a decade has been St. Mary. I mean, they're as mid-major as it gets in terms of size and resources. But this year, I would say VCU, uh, UC San Diego, and Drake are quote unquote mid majors that have a chance to get at large bids, and that's a dying breed of school right now. We used to have annual debates about the low end power conference team and what I would call the really high end mid majors, and now the way the system kind of gravitates toward the highest majors. I mean, we're going to put Oklahoma in at 6-12 in the SEC, and there was a time that a record like that would have been disqualifying. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm simply noticing the difference and kind of conveying the direction in which the committee has leaned in recent years. I want to add something for Jermaine about Liberty, if he's still on. I wanted to say, but I wanted to check it in terms of an at-large with them. At first, I have them as the last 12, not as the first 13, so I misspoke on that. Not only, in terms of an at-large, not only does Liberty not have a quad one win, they haven't played a quad one game. And I thought that, but didn't want to say it without checking it. So, that pretty much ends the at-large conversation there. Now, Jerry, as far as Auburn goes, I've kind of been out on the limb that Auburn, it's been saying for 2 weeks, that Auburn could lose out and still be the number one overall seed because they had lapped the field by such a wide margin. I still believe that. I think if Auburn were to lose their quarterfinal on Friday, and Duke or Houston were to blitz their respective tournaments, there will be a lot of talk about elevating one of them to number one overall. But at the end of the day, 20 quad one games, 16 quad one wins, half of them in quad 1A, which is the top half of quad one. Like, we haven't seen a resume like this since Kentucky went, whatever it was, 38-0 to the Final Four 10 years ago. So I still believe that Auburn's name is going to be the first one called on Sunday night. And I suppose there's a scenario in which they're the second or even third number one seed, but they're going to be a number one seed. They're going to be at a preferred location. They're going to be they're not going west, and they're going to be prohibitive Final Four favorites. Like, if whatever loss they were to take on Friday were to have happened like the second week of December, we wouldn't even be having the conversation. Like, the committee has made it very clear, whether we like it or not, that games in November mean as much, if not more, than games like this coming Saturday and Sunday. And they've seeded teams by that, criteria in recent years. And I would be extremely surprised if they deviated from that.
I think Iowa with a good draw it could beat some teams. We saw them beat USC, so I think that's enough to know that they're capable of beating USC. They're capable of beating anybody, and in the right scenario, the right matchup. The other team maybe not, depending on the level of that other team, maybe not playing quite as well as they're capable of. That I think I guess it's maybe conceivable. The committee could look at Iowa, and if they put a lot more weight on how you're playing now, they could even slide up to the 5 line. I don't quite see it that way. I think if you're taking a look at their whole body, certainly the way they're playing now factors in. But you mentioned it. There were some struggles in the early mid part of the Big Ten schedule that I think is holding them back a little bit from being any higher. The storyline part, no, I don't think that's playing into it all. You got 12 Big Ten teams in the field. To try to get those teams bracketed correctly, where you're spreading them out enough so they're not playing each other in the second round, is hard enough. Trust me, doing this exercise as many times as I have, and how many times Joe does it, he knows. It's fun to kind of look at that and maybe cross your fingers and hope, but it's really, really hard to get those teams bracketed. And also taking some geographical consideration to travel into it as well. There's just too many things that come first before trying to find the storyline part of it. It's the bracketing process when you've got this many teams is just really hard, just in and of itself. I gotta pull up there. I don't have it off the top of my head, to be honest with you. Their full schedule, but I got it close enough here. I think what's maybe has held Louisville back was the early part of the season. I think if we started the season in January, maybe we'd be talking about a little bit of a higher seed. They did schedule well. Jeff Walz always does that. While you look at that Virginia Tech loss, I guess maybe earlier in the year is something that may be holding them back a little bit. They could have used maybe one more sizable win, and they didn't, like, maybe a better performance in the ACC tournament. Maybe a little bit better performance against Notre Dame in either one of those games. NC State, they didn't play particularly well. They were. I think that's where it kind of boils down. They were one bigger win short of elevating themselves another line. But in this case, this year, 6 or 7. It actually, I'm thinking it through here. It actually will make a difference. Being on the 6 line would be a distinct advantage from being on the 7 line. But I don't think they quite get there, just because they didn't have that. They're missing that one big piece, that one big win.